Yeah, I'm just
Right.
gonna. So I just started recording. Um, but yeah, so Amir, this is like I guess the third episode of the podcast. It's
Okay.
pretty unstructured right now.
Awesome.
You know, we don't really have a name for it. We don't have a
Yo, yeah, we do. What the hell?
what's the Ding
What's the
Fu
name?
the Ding Fu podcast.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
a work in progress. Yeah, but
Sure.
yeah, basically, I think the goal for each episode is to talk about something relevant in our lives right now,
Mhm.
and just give our perspectives on the topic. We tend to go off topic, I think, pretty often, but it's not super structured. It's pretty loose, so speak whatever's on your mind, and
Sure.
yeah, we're
Sure.
just here to see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me here, and I'm just treat it as three friends
Yeah,
having a nice chat, and then
exactly.
we'll go from there.
That's exactly
Sounds
what it
good.
is.
All
That's right.
right. Cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Do you wanna? Sorry, you go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say. So, today's topic, we want to talk about investing, the stock market, the economy, money in general, right? What do we want to do with it? Big picture stuff. We're not talking about, where you're gonna eat the next day or what you're trying to buy for this upcoming sale. We're talking about long term. What do you want to do with the wealth you acquire? And I think everyone has
Right.
their
Right.
own perspective on this. It's pretty interesting, and I would say it's all fair. You're free to do with your own money as you please, right? So yeah, let's start off with yeah. Tell me about your guys' investment portfolio, guys. What's the let's just get out. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I'll say this: the first time I really thought about money long term was probably in high school. They had this guest speaker come in for. Do you guys remember like com class? Career and
Oh yeah, and
learning
life management.
life management. Yeah, so we did some pretty cool stuff in that class. I remember we looked up like different career path and the salary of them and whatever. So I remember this one guest speaker. He came in and he basically gave a very simplified breakdown of fire at the time. I didn't realize, but
Wait, seriously?
kind of like it was super dumbed down for casual life. Basically, what he said was if you just start opening an invest a savings account now, and you put like $100 in each month, and he basically showed you the basic curve where it'll grow exponentially in 5 years and 10 years, and this is how much you can make with compound interest. He didn't talk about ETFs or the stock market or anything, but the basic concept of continually putting in money into a savings or retirement account, that is one of the core principles of, I would say, fire as well, or basically just accumulating wealth for the average person in general, right?
Damn, I
So
think I missed out. I
I,
thought we were in the same class.
I'm sure you were in that class, Amir. You were probably like reading a manga on your phone or something. But yeah,
I'm
this
probably
guy,
reading some sort of stuff.
yeah, at the time I didn't think much more. I mean, at the time I was actually pretty mind blown. I remember, and then I remember talking to a couple people. I think Ben was one of them, and I was like, "Yo, this is. Did you know about this? Like, this is crazy, right? Like, do the adults know about this? Like, and then Ben was just like, yeah, it's not really realistic given his interest rates are like super high and blah blah blah. And he basically broke it down as like this is a idealistic dream scenario. You're not gonna make that much money. And so I was like, yeah, okay, this guy's pretty smart. I trust Ben, right? So, I didn't think much more about it.
Sorry, when did this happen? Which grade?
It's like grade 10, 11, probably.
Wait, I missed this too. And
Really?
how does?
Right? I don't remember this.
You guys remember this? I remember this pretty
Wait,
vividly.
is this why
No.
Ben is like 6 years ahead of me in med school?
Maybe, man. This one
Hey,
com class,
hey.
dude. He
He knew
yeah,
ahead. he looked ahead.
he was like, guys, you guys don't need to come to this class. I think it's not important. It's yeah, he knew what's up. But yeah, the whole concept of just putting aside some money in a regular interval. Usually it's monthly. It could be bi-weekly, whatever. Um, into a savings account for long term. It seems like such a simple concept, but I think not enough people do it, right? Like not as many people do it as you think. So yeah, why do you think that is, guys? Where's this money going?
Well, can I start,
Yeah,
Tony?
of course.
Yeah, so I guess I'll first say when I kind of started doing this whole thing, probably I think a year or two after, I think 2 years after I graduated,
Mm-hmm.
I was making okay money, not like big or anything, but then I was thinking to myself, oh my God, for me to keep doing this, like I can, and I was telling my boss then, which is like the owner of the company, it's like I could already see myself like when I'm 40, 45, still doing this. Like I can't keep doing that. And and I was still pretty into the job and the company back then, right? And then he's taking care of me, of course. But the amount of money would just you know wasn't enough because for you to really retire back then I didn't know, but now it's like for you to retire like on the 4% rule. I don't know if you guys heard about that. Yeah, okay. So the 4% rule, what you need a million and a half in Canada. Sounds about right, right? Without, with your own place, car and stuff like that. But excess cash, a million and a half, right? Depends on your lifestyle. And I think I live a pretty frugal lifestyle, right? I'm not, and then plus it's not like my parents are very well off to give me that money. So I'm like, damn, for me to make $1 million, hell no, right? So I was like, okay, what other ways can I really make this happen? And back then, I was like totally just throwing my money into a mutual fund, which is getting ripped off. But other than that, and then I was just Googling, um, and then there's this subreddit uh, called, what's it called? Personal Finance, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys heard of it?
Yeah.
And then on that same thread, and I was just browsing through, and then I see another called Fire. I'm like, what the hell's Fire? So I went into it, and that's kind of and that's where the rabbit, like I guess the rabbit hole began.
What? So when did this happen? When did you discover fire?
Like 2 3 years after I graduated. That was maybe 2 3 years ago.
Okay, yeah, because you never talked about that with me, so I was surprised because earlier on
Yeah,
you were
no,
actually saying,
it's because I got the idea like probably very beginning before you went to Edmonton for med school. I think maybe half a year prior to that.
okay, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and then we weren't, I think, hanging out as often.
no, we're not right. So yeah, that's kind of when I kind of had the picture in my mind, and then just slowly piecing everything together, right?
Mm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So yeah, so my
Yes.
investment strategy really is just focus on fire, right? And what gets me there faster is what I would do safely. Yeah.
It's dangerous to play with fire, you know. So
Yes, of course. Yes.
Jack, what was the original question again? It was about why do you think people don't save as much money as they should? Why they don't follow this like really simple plan?
yeah, but like I like the style of everyone talking about I guess how they got introduced into investing or fire in the first place too. So we can start with that because I'm interested in your story, Tony, because you were the first one who I heard about fire from.
Dude, I'm the first one for everything, man. I introduced you to Elon Musk. I introduced you to like Planet Money,
Dude, why didn't
to
you talk to me about Wall Street
Fire.
bets 5 years earlier? I could have started losing
Yo,
money
I'll
so
teach you
much
some
earlier.
more stuff. Don't worry.
I
But
can't wait. I look forward.
but first of all, to answer your first question, actually, why most people don't do this is
Sure.
because they haven't had that class. Like, I don't know. I never was in this class with you.
That's a
Damn.
common complaint nowadays. Is people are like, why are we learning this subject or this subject in high school? We could be learning about taxes or personal finance, and it's kind of true. These are pretty
Yeah.
important and not so complicated fundamental ideas that I think people should drill down early in their financial lives before, because it's easy to spiral down, I think, into a rabbit hole, which we can talk about later as well, of like never ending
Hmm.
debt and low credit scores and yeah, just paycheck to paycheck living.
Wait, can I just
Yeah,
quickly jump in? No, can I? Sorry, I totally missed this part
sure.
because Tony asked me when I really started going into fire.
Mm-hmm.
And it's part of answering that question is that why don't people do now? And I think I could be wrong, right? And this is just my personal bias that people are okay with where they are,
Mm.
or where they're gonna be in the future, and just being okay with it. And I think for me is that I think for me when I first started fire, really getting into fire is like when I first started really getting into hiking. Keep getting, just climbing higher, reaching a higher summit, trying, different or like harder, more difficult mountains and stuff like that, right? And seeing the top and then achieving there is like something. It's hard to describe, but it's addicting almost, right? And just try and keep beating yourself every day. I think that's the plan. So I think the mentality is to I guess always getting better, always achieving higher. That's kind of like why I guess for myself that I did it, but like maybe for other people, they're okay with the job they have, they're okay with the life they have. Maybe not in 5 or 10 years, but right now, short term, they're okay with it. And that, comfort really kills them, right? So I think maybe that's why. And especially we're in Canada. I mean, it's not like we're in China where opportunities are limitless. But Canada, it's unless you really win the lottery, I don't think there's much you could do in the corporate world or in terms of job wise that for you to really climb that fast in 5-10 years, right? Is what I'm referring to, not like a lifetime, right?
So
Yeah.
how does I guess fire fit into that philosophy of climbing higher? Because the way I see it is a lot of people see fire as almost like an escape hatch. Like they see it as something at the end, and then their life gets more peaceful. So there's no longer, I guess, that climbing. So how does that climbing philosophy of always aspiring for more fit into with this philosophy?
Well, for me, it's comparing what I guess what I do just on my free time versus job, right? Because my job, the more I do, it's more like I don't see the point of this, right? It's to a point that I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Whereas hiking, you get that adrenaline, you get that sense of achievement, right? And then it's like, okay, where can I do more of this, less of that, right? And then it's like, okay, well, one, I need money. Second, actually, there's no second. I just need money, right? Because time is money, and I use that money to buy more time, right? And that's pretty much it. And I think maybe I'm getting too far of myself or getting too far of the topic, but I think to achieve fire, you do need that resilience. Is that the right word? To
Sure.
actually stick to it, and then because it is going to be that tough. Um, Greed is going to get you, right? You have this much money. Why are you not spending it, right? You have the capital or the money to change your lifestyle, but why are you not doing it, right? You could be driving down a Tesla Model S, but why are you not, right? Those are kind of the things that you got to keep facing every single day. But it's that resilience. I think it is that really keep you goal focused, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. Is that kind of touch on the question? Sorry to interrupt, but I thought it would just be I thought it would be just something that I forgot earlier to add.
Yeah, I think it's really good. We don't have to keep this as like interview format or anything. Like, feel free to. I actually think that the conversations are better when we just kind of act normal rather than
Exactly.
try to be too scripted.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Jack, what do you want to say next?
I think. Well, first let's get your story of your intro story, Tony.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Do I interrupt?
I think it's complicated. So I've never really cared much about money, to be honest, until much more recently. The way I grew
How
up,
recent?
how recent? Let's say the last
Yeah.
3 years, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The kind of my family story is that, like your family, like we weren't super rich. My parents came from a small village in China.
Mhm.
And they were the first generation to graduate high school, first generation to get into university, and they both were super high achievers. They both got PhDs, and then they left the village. They went to a city in China, and then from China we moved to the UK, and then now we've come to Canada. So I think for them, money has been a huge focus in their lives, right? Like it's just part of that development of like you aim for what you don't have. And what they didn't have when they were young were like money, resources. But I think what happened was they were so focused on money and us moving around so much, they kind of neglected family. And so for me, when I grew up, what I missed the most was family, and it was never really much about the money. And so I didn't really care about money for a very long time. Then I think I heard about so I think that's a healthy viewpoint, because what it made me value more is time, is family, is my happiness, my well-being, and like the time I spent with friends and family. And there came a point, I think, a few years ago when I realized that I needed money for that, right? And I think it was around 2016. I was back in school, right, doing my second degree to increase my GPA to get into med school. And I heard this podcast with Tim Ferriss and Mr. Money Mustache. And that was my intro into the FIRE movement, was Mr. Money Mustache talking about how he essentially traded, money for time, for free time. And he did this by saving up enough of a stash that he can use the 4% rule, and he lives very frugally because his value system, like mine, isn't based around possessions, right, or consuming. And so rather than spending his money on that, he basically used that money to purchase time, right? And I became really interested in that idea, but at the time I made zero money, right? I still make no money. But that seed was planted,
Well,
I
used
think.
to also
And,
make
Well, don't we all, right?
and I think that seed was planted, and my focus for a very long time, right? I told you, was trying to fix my health problem, which I actually did in the last year. And so then there was a shift in my mind to being like, okay, I've solved the most immediate problem in my life. Now I have the ability to see further, right? To have a longer view on life. And I started thinking, okay, what am I gonna do? Like, after I graduate, after I start working, right? And then this FIRE idea came back to me more strongly. And I started, trying to do some financial planning. And I've done my financial planning. But I don't think I'm going to do what Mr. Money Mustache did, which is to retire, right? Do just not work at all. Because for me, I think there are a few things. One, medicine has to be, I think, both a calling and a job. I think it's difficult to just do it as a job. You do have other people's lives in your hands in some ways. And for me, part of me feels a responsibility because I took a spot in medical school, right? There are not that many spots. I took a spot in medical school, and if I'm just not going to work anymore, right, then, it's a waste of resources. But also, I really enjoy medicine. Like, I really enjoy my time in the family medicine clinics, talking to patients. I think that's really cool. And you get an insight that you wouldn't get anywhere else, right? Like, you don't get to hear these stories, right, every day. Like, people aren't just telling their life stories to some random stranger, but they would to their doctor, right? And in a way, you can live vicariously through people. The difference is I see a lot of doctors burning burnout and suicide is a huge problem in medicine. And I think where financial independence, financial freedom comes in is the ability to step away, when I feel like it's not good for me. And another part of it is to be able to practice properly. How many of us have gone to a family doctor and we're able to talk to them for like literally 3 minutes, right? You wait 20 minutes in the lounge, right, in the lobby, then you wait another like 20 minutes in the room, and then the doctor comes in and you talk to him for like 2 minutes, and then he like rushes out, writes your script or whatever, right, leaves. I don't think that's proper, and I hope that's what leads where this financial independence thing leads for me.
Cool.
That's awesome.
All right.
Yeah, I didn't actually know about the second part, and I don't think you talked about before, like the living vicariously through your patients. That's pretty cool. I never thought about it that way.
I guess vicariously is probably a poor choice of words, but I think it just how do I put it? Man, like this goes on to even a longer story. I don't want to monopolize the time, but basically, growing up, I had a lot of problems. Like I had like mental health issues when I was young, from the stress of like moving around so much and stuff. I had OCD from when I was like around 9 to when I was about 20, when I figured out how to cure it. Like I studied psych in school for a reason. Now I'm studying medicine because I had health reason. Like it's really, you can see that my decisions have never been about
banking next. Just asking for a friend.
Yeah. I've never chosen my career path and stuff based on, I guess, money, right? It's always been to solve a certain problem that was personal. But anyways, where this is going is that I guess is again like what's important to me. What's important to me is happiness, well-being, right? And part of that, I think, of well-being and happiness is having meaning in your life. And I think being able to help people and being able to have that relationship with people is a huge component of well-being, right? So in a way, I don't think I'm really losing out much, right? Even if I don't make as much money, I think I'm not really losing out in the grand scheme of things because I'm getting the things that I would have used the money to purchase anyways.
Yeah. And I think that's also a pretty important part of FIRE that maybe is not as discussed often. Is it's not just about rushing to save as much money as possible to hit this milestone that you can retire off of. It's also about finding sustainable, I guess, alternatives to materialistic consumption and fulfillment. A lot of it is more about preaching a lifestyle where we're trying to separate ourselves from the societal norms of working your 9-to-5 job so that you get your paycheck every couple of weeks so that you can spend it on these things that you're going to replace in a year or so, and I think that also relates back to the question I asked earlier is how come everybody doesn't save their money like this? Because it's almost like we're programmed to behave a certain way where we're expected to work towards that next paycheck to buy that new thing that just came out that everybody has that we must get, right? It's part of, especially Western society, it's the capitalistic behavior is so normalized and celebrated, right? Like everybody, you get the latest iPhone and you're gonna post it on your Instagram or your Snapchat, and people are gonna comment like, "Whoa, wow, cool," right? And you get satisfaction from that, and that drives you towards your next purchase, and it creates a feedback loop, right? And yeah, I think FIRE, a big part of FIRE.
Answer for that.
What's up?
I got an answer to that, I guess. It's well, it leads to why stocks always goes up, right? Because it's the Western
Yep. Let's
mentality. Because
it's all related. It's all related.
It is all related, and then I think why
the beautiful country of
us?
America.
I think why us three reaches like FIRE, using different not reaches, but like having the idea of FIRE. And we never talked about this, obviously, right? But we all have this idea of FIRE, differently. I think it's just because we're we're raised differently. We grow up in a different environment, right? Because I think statistically speaking, I think Asian communities or Asian culture just saves a lot more of their
Yeah.
income compared to westernized cultures, right? And that this is why, you know, quote unquote Asian stock market doesn't always go up, and us in the US does, right? And that's how really it works. That's how economy works.
That's honestly a really great point that you brought up, like the cultural differences alone. Yeah, people in the West, right? Like they don't really think as long term. I think with the money that they have currently, right? I think Asian
Mhm.
people, especially, you look at the money now and you're thinking, if I play this right, I can buy a house in the next 5 or 10 years, or I can retire in the next 20 years, or whatever. Whereas Westernized people, it's about like, this is my paycheck for the month. Like, what am I doing for this month, right? I'm gonna buy the stuff, materialistic stuff like we talked about. But more recently, the trend has been, I'm gonna look in the stocks. That's the cool new thing, right? And the funny thing is, I don't think they're looking at stocks as this long term investment working towards fire. They're looking at it as um, almost entertainment, almost a quick way to get rich, right? Like a lottery ticket, but more popular than ever because of all the success stories that you keep seeing these days, right?
Mhm.
People,
In
I
regards
think it's,
to, I
it's you.
sorry, I'm
Go
just gonna
ahead.
go. Yeah, I think like sorry, what was I gonna say? So I guess talking about the cultural differences, I think that part of it may be cultural, but more to me it's about affluence. So I think in any society that becomes rich enough, they're not going to think about saving as much. I think this cultural saving that we talk about, among Asians, is due to the fact that most of these Asian parents or grandparents grew up during a period of poverty, right? Like, and then so they put a much greater emphasis on money. And if they see that there's a way to make even more money by saving and investing, they're going to be tempted to do that. Whereas I think if you grew up in a society where money was never a problem, resources were never a problem, then you will not put off your current consumption for the future, right? For future gains, right? You would rather just consume now because to you, it seems like, well, money will never run out, right? I will never be short of resources. So why can't I just get this thing now? And I think they don't have the discipline because they haven't seen the hurt, I think.
so I think I agree with you to an extent that, yeah, affluence is a big part of it. I've definitely met Asian people in mostly Vancouver who have very different outlooks on money than people like us do, right? And it's definitely entirely because their family, they didn't have to grow up worrying about money as a resource. And yeah, in fact, the more affluent parents you have, the more exorbitant your spendings are likely to be because you've never considered money to be a limiting resource in your lifestyle. It's just not something you're gonna think about. But I do want to say that in America, I think there are still a lot of people who I wouldn't say are affluent. They're maybe close to living paycheck to paycheck, but they're still kind of caught up in this mass consumer feedback cycle, feedback loop. And I think a lot of it is due to how America is such a capitalistic country. You know, uh, everything here culturally, in the media, it's all to promote new products and buying new things. And, like, I'll give you like sports leagues, right? Everything is sponsored now. If you watch a sports broadcast, like, let's watch the Doritos shot of the game. Let's watch the Sprite assist of the. You know what I mean, right? Like everything, it's become so normalized we don't even think about it. But yeah, that's probably why they're so caught up in this kind of cycle. But I think culture still plays a role towards your spending. And I would say that China, I don't have the most experience. Maybe American comment as well, but I think China has been growing towards this more consumerist lifestyle as well. For example, I've been hearing about like different holidays that China would have now, where they're really just an excuse to have sales on like Alibaba or Taobao or whatever, and it's like record-breaking sales numbers every year, right? So I think in general we're seeing a shift towards that, and because it's a win-win for the people who have money. It's
And, and I think and I think you're absolutely right. And I think the newer generation, and I'm talking about, ooh, I 90s or after, like born 90s or
Zoomers.
after,
Zoomers.
because of their parents have to save up so much money,
Right.
they become comfortable with money
They're
now.
reaping the
It's
fruit of
not
their
a
parents' labor. Yeah.
exactly, right? Because I know when I first came to Canada, oh God, I didn't have any money, right?
Yeah.
And it was scary for me to ask my parents for money because knowing how they see money is hard for me to ask,
Right.
that, right? And now, since after a generation of people in China already saving up so much money, the newer generation don't have that sense of, okay, well, I need to save. And I think more and more people, especially in China, that I see it and that I know is spending a lot of money on just things, and we call it. There's there's a specific term become more popular now. It's that there's a group of people that spends all they earn in a month. I don't know if you guys know that term, but it's an actual thing now, right?
In Chinese, what's the term?
月光族.
I haven't heard of it, but
Okay. But it's like they spend all their money. It's like yuan, right? It's month, guan, it's like gone, right? So
I
but
can
yeah,
definitely think
that's
of
how,
some people that applies to in my life. Yeah.
but yeah, no, it's honestly how it is because, like Tony said, it's what really your parents do and act really pass down to you. But if they and then there's different type of parents, of course. Some are caring, some are sharing, some teaches you stuff, some believe that giving you money is the best way. So it really develops, or I guess produce different people, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, we talked a lot about saving, and I guess in my view, saving was never, I guess, a big thing on my mind. Like the way I think about fire is not really through saving, but spending your money wisely.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think I really hold back on saving money on things that really matter to me, and I end up saving only because a lot of the things that matter to me don't cost money, right? Or doesn't have to cost money. There are alternatives that doesn't cost money.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I guess this is getting a little bit off topic, but there's this thing in my head from many years ago when I was studying psychology. We didn't read the paper. We were taught about the paper that showed how people's level of happiness levels off relative to their income. I think it happens around 80,000 or so, right? And that taught me that money was never going to buy you happiness, that it was a necessary but um, not a complete guarantee, right? Like um, of happiness. And the way I guess I see it right now is that people, they have money, and I think humans are generally very short-sighted, and we evolved that way because human lifespans weren't very long in the past, right? So it's better to do what you can do right now, right? Because who knows what's going to happen in the future. And I think that kind of mentality is carried over, and so people, they don't see further away, and they just see in the moment, I can get happiness by spending this money right now, right? And they don't really do the necessary calculations or anything. So I don't know where I was getting at with that one.
No, I like the point you brought up about income correlating with happiness. I think part of it is, at least I can speak from the tech industry perspective, is you obviously you join a company, you want to start climbing the ranks, so to speak, and as a software developer you do that by taking on more responsibility, overseeing more project designs, taking on more ownership in general, right? And that directly correlates with more stress most of the time. Like the more things that you're involved in and people defer to you to, the more possible areas where things will go wrong, and things will go wrong, and then you're the person who has to come in and fix things, right? So And if you transition into management, then you deal with a different set of stress entirely from both your below you and above you, right? So the higher you climb, the more money you make. Generally, I think the the more stress that comes with your day to day job, and I think that definitely plays a big role in your level of happiness. Um, and I think that's again like a big part of fire is balancing your income with your happiness, your lifestyle, right? Your you know trading money for happiness essentially. We said time earlier, but like that's it's you're trading it for other things that you can gain in your life.
Right. I think the point you're making is that you don't want to completely sacrifice your life now, right, to make that money in order to retire early,
Mm-hmm.
because your time right now matters just as much as your time in the future, right? If
Yes.
you work 50 years to the bone to try to make this huge amount of money that you can have a lot of money in retirement, it may not be a good trade-off because the average level of happiness you've had over those years may not be as high as it could be, right? May not be
Exactly.
maximum.
Exactly. Yes. So yeah, I think we're all pretty similar in that like Tony said, we'll spend on the things that we value more. Um, doesn't mean that we're necessarily cheap or frugal. Just means we prioritize different things, right? So for me, I think the things that I would spend more on would be like life experiences, like traveling. You know, things that I can't do on a day to day basis easily. Things that I can't necessarily replace by reading about or watching about. Just things that you would rather experience in person. So yeah, I think that's something that I would be more willing to spend on, maybe versus like clothing or the latest gadgets, so to speak. So what about you guys? Like, what do you think are things that you value more than maybe others would?
Okay. For me, it's crazy. The whole time you're talking about that topic, I was thinking, yeah, I'd be pretty upset if I, break my phone today, which costs maybe a range of $500 to 1K. But, you know, wouldn't be that sad if my YOLOs didn't go to according to plan, which is maybe also 500 to 1K. And it's
Hey,
just a
that's a
mentality thing.
conservative estimate, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny though, and I think the amount of sadness that it's totally different, and I don't know how to really put it in words at this moment. It's just that it's just different level of things, and I guess for me it's that, and that really tells me something, is that I don't really care about physical things currently, right? And I care about, and I think really just getting my goal faster, and then what I do after the goal, and I guess what do I do after the goal, right? And I think just enjoy life how I see it, right? And I no longer need are constrained, with work, with the responsibility of making enough money to buy food, have a shelter over my head,
No.
but really just having that time to do whatever I want.
Have you thought about what you're going to do when you do fire? Because,
Short,
this
short,
problem, I think that comes
yes.
up a lot to a lot of people when they retire. They don't know what they're going to do. And a lot of them go back to work because they found retirement so boring. They never
Mhm.
thought of an escape plan. They never thought of a plan B,
Yeah.
right?
And I think so. I definitely thought about it, but only short term. Like I'm not talking about after I fire, this is what I'm going to do, because that really defeat the purpose of fire, because you shouldn't have a plan after you fire, right? Because the reason why the reason why you fire is this is my belief, right? Tony, we could talk about this, we could debate about this, is that I could really just be spontaneous of what I do, right? I could be going on a trip, I could be backpacking through whatever, I could settle down somewhere, but then decides this is not the city that I want and move somewhere else, right? I really haven't thought about it, and I could be enjoying doing something like teaching skiing, right? Skiing, for example, for a couple years, and then totally switch to doing something else, and that's what really, I guess, captures me, the freedom of it, and not really have a plan. But of course, don't get me wrong. Like I'm going to go into Europe, hike all this stuff, right? I'm going to go to, France, hike all that stuff, go to China, maybe backpack a little bit, right? Do a car travel thing. I don't know, road trip through Iceland or something, right? Just enjoy nature. And I think that's really what I want to do short term. But like the long term, I don't know. See where life brings me, I guess.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
cool. That's pretty interesting. Yeah. I think that is a pretty different but also equally valid way of looking at fire than Tony, for example. Um, yeah, do you want to talk about, I guess, your plans for when you reach fire?
Why don't you go first, actually?
Yeah, sure. I think I'm kind of a mix between you and Amir. I wouldn't say I'm as fluid in like I'm gonna hop to different cities or try out different jobs for the experience. But I think I definitely like the idea of the flexibility and the freedom that it gives you to no longer be tied down to your money. Um, I think what I would do is try to invest more time with my family. Um, you know, the one thing I'm definitely worried about is what we talked about is where if I make a lot of money, no guarantee that I will, but will it impact my kids growing up how they view money, right? I don't want them to grow up thinking money is this easy to come by resource, and I don't want them to take it for granted, definitely. So, I would hope that um, being fire would give me time to spend with my kids to give them a different outlook on money, and that part's still up to me. But just being there for them is gonna be a huge part, I think. Um, and in terms of, I guess, long term, it would definitely be good. Okay, this is the dream. This is the ideal dream scenario that'll never happen. But just imagine
I
if
give you $2 million right now. What would you do? Right? Give me the
the,
answer.
the dream
Let's
scenario
go.
is that I just become a VC, and I can look at startups in like disruptive fields or innovative, like I would want to say like world changing for the better, but realistically, I'm trying to find the next Alibaba, right? But like just something like that where I can like look at new companies, and I don't want to do too much research. I'll leave that off to the accountants and stuff. But I wanna be able to have some influence in that kind of stuff. But again, that's not something that's achievable unless you're a multimillionaire already. So that's more the pipe dream scenario. The more realistic scenario is some lower level kind of consulting to startups in whatever area that I'm settled down in.
See, I don't have that at all. It's just like I could talk with you guys about something, but I'm just not interested in consulting for no money or certain money. I'm just not. I just don't want to be tied down to a responsibility anymore,
I mean, that's
and
fair,
focus on the freedom
and
part.
I think the key is, yeah, it's still not a responsibility. It's just something that gives you fulfillment. Once you're no longer working, right? It could be anything. Some people enjoy providing value in the sense of like guidance, or mentorship.
Right, right.
Some people enjoy their free time, like they want to fuck off to a mountain alone for a week and be one with nature. And I think it's all equally as valid, right? Whatever gives you happiness, that's I
Yeah,
guess not materialistic, is it's all good towards fire.
cool.
My question is, you talked about Amir. You talked about not wanting any responsibilities. I'm thinking in my head, right, just from what I know about psychology, how that would influence you. I'm not sure that's going to lead to the most happiness, honestly. I think humans need a certain level of responsibility in order to make them happy. Because if they're and it could be a responsibility that you tie yourself to. I think that is the difference. It's not so much that you don't want any responsibility, but that you want to be able to choose your responsibility, right? Because
Yeah,
suppose
I think that's right. Yeah.
suppose you have absolutely no responsibility, then you actually don't even know where to begin or what you're gonna do. You're gonna get bored of what you're doing really quickly. And then if you're scared of responsibility, then you're gonna be scared to do anything that has meaning, basically, right? So
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think that you will find, when you do have all this free time, that I think you would want to do something that has a bit of responsibility to it.
No, I totally agree with that, and I think maybe I just phrased it a little bit differently. But it's not having what should I say? It's not having a responsibility that's constant, same stuff, right? It's different, like because you know, being fire, I think it's focusing on the freedom part of it. You could choose your responsibility freely. Whether being big or small, it doesn't matter. But I think having no responsibility at all, you are. I think you just get a feel of being useless or just dead inside. But yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't study psychology, but I feel like for me, if I didn't have any responsibility, it would lower my own sense of like self worth or value. Um, yeah, I don't know if this is related to what you're talking about, but I think it does give me some level of fulfillment when, I know that I can be dependent upon certain things, whether at work or in my personal life.
So now that we're talking about happiness, I actually have this crazy theory of happiness. I don't think it's correct, but I also haven't really found I guess like my own great arguments against it. And the way I see it is happiness is a signal. It's not necessarily a destination. It only happens as a direction. So what I mean by this, and I could be totally wrong about this. Haven't touched psych in years, right? But is that from a very basic standpoint, I guess evolutionarily. So evolutionary psychology arguments are also always pretty poor because you can't test them. But um, basically, if we think about happiness as the signal, a reward signal for an organism to do something that increases its evolutionary fitness, right? That kind of makes sense because eating food makes us happy, right? Like reproducing makes us happy. Gaining social status makes us happy. These are all proxies for things that increase our chances of survival, increase our chances of reproduction, right? And I think this goes on to explain habituation to good things, right? Where let's say you eat, like you begin by eating really crappy food every day, right? Then the next day someone gives you food, let's say you've jumped from 1 star to 2 star. Like, oh, this tastes awesome, right? And then after like a couple weeks, you're like, okay, this food is it's bland again, right? And then now you need 3 star food to continue to increase, right? I think Mr. Money Mustache called this the hedonic treadmill. And I think that makes sense from that point of view because if happiness is only meant to be a signal to direct you towards something that's going to increase your evolutionary fitness, right? That makes sense because you don't want a person or any organism to stay still, right? You want them to continue to move to increase their fitness, right? It makes no sense for, someone, let's say, they could be having like 1,000, like let's say they have 1,000 calories now, right? And it fulfills all of their daily needs. Let's suppose that's not realistic. Let's say 2,000, right? And also you give them the opportunity to consume 1,000 more, right? If that person didn't have a drive within them, a psychological mechanism to get them to go out and get that person is probably not going to survive as much as the person who does have that drive, right? So I began to see happiness as a signal, and to that end, I think we need to design a lifestyle, right? If we want to maximize happiness, I think we want to design a lifestyle in which you are rewarded continuously for getting better, and that reward must be direct to you towards a goal that's better. So that's a pretty poor explanation, but I'll kind of try to explain with an example, right? So a lot of people, they feel pleasure when they eat junk food, right? And that makes sense because they're very calorie dense foods. In the past, if you didn't do that, you'd be the animal that doesn't survive, right? And now in an oasis of high calorie foods, it's become extremely unhealthy, right? And so maybe what we need to do is, design a lifestyle in such a way that we are rewarded for healthier food, right? Maybe that means taking a break. Maybe that means taking like a fast or something, right? Or eating some not so great food so that you can taste the good food again, right? But yeah, we're talking about happiness, and this is something that's been on my mind, right? Is this idea that happiness is a direction and not necessarily a destination. And to that end, I think we need to keep moving. And that's why I think that, when people do retire, they need to continue to do something, right? Or else they're not going to be happy because at that point they're staying still. And I don't think that really works out psychologically.
Yeah, I think I get what you're getting at. You're saying typically, traditionally, the direction that we as humans want to go is towards like more consumption, more like a step up from what you currently have. But you're saying it might be better to keep moving, but not necessarily in that direction, to go towards a healthier, more sustainable, more modest approach, right?
I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't think the person who's consuming more is necessarily happier.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is because they have to continue to consume more, right? And that's just impossible without them, frankly, dying,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whereas I think in the past, what would happen was that there'd be natural breaks, right? There'd be a time where you can't find any food, for example, right? And then that would kind of reset that hedonic treadmill for you. And I think what's happening now is the people who are consuming more, they hit a natural break too. It's called not being able to eat anymore and feeling ill and getting sick, right?
Yeah,
and then that reset
this is why not November is a thing, right?
maybe, right? Yeah, actually, to be honest, yes, I think so.
I think that is kind of like a similar concept, like
yeah,
Just as a reset.
a reset against type of like addiction, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I'll say that, like for example, among the stoner community, like tolerance breaks are a thing where, if you smoke regularly, you won't get as high, like as big of high as you did the previous day, and you need to smoke more and more. So the answer to that is you take a break for a month, for whatever, like for a year, like as long as it takes, right? Like, and you reset your tolerance level and I guess your enjoyment from that, right? So I think, yeah, I totally get what you're getting at.
I guess what I'm really trying to get at though is a problem I haven't figured out, which is how do you keep moving in that in that direction without taking a break, right?
I will say that societally it's going to be pretty hard.
No, I mean individually, right?
Individually.
I don't know if it's even possible for any individual to figure out a way. I think naturally there's always breaks to bring you down in such a way, right? Like you can't just keep going in one direction all the time, it seems.
Yeah. Just like stocks.
Just like stocks.
I don't know, man.
It all comes around.
Yeah, you can't keep going up, man. People gotta take profit eventually.
But honestly though, like memes aside, like stocks can always go up. It has, today, for example, there's periods where you buy the dip. Yeah, that's how you word it.
Did you
I'm just kidding. But no, honestly, there's cycles, right? I don't know if you guys read the book about how the economy works by what's that guy? Ray Dalio? Yeah, The Principle. I don't know if you guys read that book, but he's a famous investment strategy, probably the most famous. And then he explains the history of economics in that way that nothing really just keeps going up. Like much of Tony just said, it just never keeps going on that direction. You have to have a reset, and then it follows it a certain direction. Maybe it keeps, resetting, downward maybe, until a point where it goes up again.
I don't think that's true, actually.
No?
I think talking about completely different things, yeah, because I think the way happiness evolved was as a signal, right? A directional signal, right? Whereas you're talking about something physical, right? That's not a regulating system, right? So I think in a regulating system, there must be up and downs, right? In order to achieve homeostasis. But I think when you think about something physical like the stock market, I think you can always produce more. And I think there are, things that we've seen go up, right? For example, the population has continued to go up. And unless we hit some correcting mechanism, like we reach the carrying capacity or something, which I don't think we will actually, I think the population will only go up, and then, we'll spread out to Mars and whatever, right? And the population will continue to expand. Or if you just even think about like the universe, right? The size of the universe continues to expand.
I agree with that, but you're looking at the bigger picture. It's, I would say, human population is on an uptrend, and it's always increasing. But you can't argue that there's no setbacks. Like, for example, year 2020, it's a slower growth compared to the other years because of, COVID, and there's more death, right? Don't get me wrong, the bigger pictures, it's always going to be an uptrend. Just like the stock market, it's always going to be a bull market or bear market. But I personally think you're going to see a longer period of a stagnation, maybe here, maybe there. But generally, yeah, it's always going to be going upward because that's just, I see how humanity is, always achieving for the better things.
I think the difference is that I believe that happiness, for example, has a window in which it never leaves, right? So it will always oscillate within this window.
Okay,
right?
okay.
Whereas
I see.
for a stock market, there is no this upper bound, right? There's a zero bound, but there's no upper bound,
That's
and then it may go like this, right? But it will go on forever. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I think that's the
Yeah,
difference.
yeah.
What I was trying to get at was trying to solve this problem of how do you stay at this maximal level without needing to dip down for happiness. And I think that's a really difficult problem to solve.
Why do you
But
think
I think this
there's...
is a good transition into the stock market, because I think that's something that we're really interested in talking about, especially with you.
I almost feel like we could do a part 2 on just focusing on the economy and stock market at this point, because I like the conversation that we had up until
Yeah,
now, where we were
yeah.
focusing more on your own life, like, I guess, pursuing happiness and stuff, and we haven't really touched on the money aspect of this whole topic.
Well, is there a time limit on these kind of things, or where you guys got
What are
places to
we at? We're
go?
probably at around an hour. I think in general we should aim for the episodes to be like an hour and a half, hour and a half
Okay.
max, and I could see us spending like another hour easily on
Oh,
the
yeah.
next topic. Probably more. Probably more.
To be honest, I don't really mind like episode length that's longer. I think more in-depth conversation generally is a higher quality content.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, what do you think, Jack?
It's just there needs to be a balance between the quality of the content and the overall length. If the goal is to have people listen to it eventually, I think.
How about we take a break and then we decide if we want to continue with part 2 or not?
Yeah. Let me just check the time real quick.
It's 9 o'clock my time, so I could go on. I could stop.
We
Doesn't matter to me.
just hit an hour basically.
Yeah, the reason I say that is because like when I listen to podcasts, I'm at a point where if the podcast is less than 2 hours, I start to see it as a waste of time, because like
Really?
less than not even great. Yeah, because it just doesn't get deep enough into something for me.
Oh, interesting.
At
You
this
gotta
point,
warm up, right?
Planet Money. I used to really like Planet Money. At this point, I'm just like, oh, Planet Money's not long enough, And then I go to economics, which is 40 minutes, usually to an hour. And I'm like, that's not long enough. And then I go listen to some other thing like Peter Tia or whatever. That's
interesting.
longer.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, I definitely agree with having longer form conversations. Yeah, I don't know. I think in the beginning it doesn't really matter. We should just go with whatever we feel like, see how it works out. Yeah, so I'm down to keep going.
Yeah, I'm down.
Can we can we take like a 5-minute break and then maybe do a part 2? Or do you guys want to keep going?
Yeah, we could take a break.
Let's get a water break.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, that'll be ideal.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I'll be right back then.